Everyone, my name is Karen. I'm the curator at the Historical Society of Montgomery County, PA. As you may notice, I am in historic Montgomery Cemetery this afternoon. This cemetery is owned and maintained by the Historical Society. It's a few days before Halloween in 2020, and I thought this would be a good time to discuss a cold case. Well, it all started with the investigation of a death of Ivan Steinbright. He was 4 years old. He and his sister had gone to their neighbor's house, the Garber house, at 517 Swede Street, and they were given pumpkin pie. His sister decided she did not like the pie, so she gave her slice to her brother. He then ate both slices and ended up dying. Other people in the Garber house also got sick a few days later when they sat down for dinner on Thursday, November 9th, 1882. After this meal and this most recent poisoning, attorney Charles Garber, Mrs. Garber's husband, he ended up dying as well. At this time, the doctors came, and originally they had thought it was a case of malaria poisoning, but with this second round of poisoning, they realized it was actually poisoning in the food, something much more serious than just a case of malaria or something more benign like a normal small amount of food poisoning. So, to investigate what exactly happened to Ivan and Charles, Dr. Elwood Corson actually took some of Mrs. Garber's pumpkin pie and fed it to his cat, if you can believe that. And not to his surprise, the cat also got sick. When he further investigated Mrs. Garber's kitchen, he actually found lumps of crystals in her flour. It had been kept in a pottery vessel, so it was just an open container with a lid on it that anyone could have put something in it had they chosen to. And when he looked at the crystals more closely, he realized that these crystals were arsenic. So it turns out that both Charles and Ivan died of arsenic poison because the flour had been used to make the pie crust. Realizing that this was more than likely an intentional act rather than a random case of weird arsenic getting into someone's flour, a jury was actually summoned, and the district attorney, Irving P. Wanger, he led the investigation. Suspects were one, Mrs. Garber herself, and two was her brother and father, John and Albinus. Apparently, Annie had actually been in a bad relationship with her brother and father. After her mother had died, she had left property to the daughter. And there was some family dispute as to whether or not Annie coerced the mother into giving her the land. That was never fully revealed in this investigation. When Annie's brother Albinus came to testify, he was actually intoxicated during his testimony. So there were a lot of times during his trial where he didn't fully remember things, and at one point he almost forgot that he did actually buy arsenic in May 1882. Remember, the poisoning was in November, so this was several months prior to that. He had bought arsenic to deal with a rat infestation problem at John's house on Airy Street. And it actually turns out that he did actually purchase the arsenic at Pulley's, and they claim they used every piece of arsenic that was purchased there in getting rid of the rat infestation. So by the time November came around, there was essentially a claim that they no longer had any arsenic anywhere on their property to then poison the Garber family. So then, District Attorney Wanger, he calls forward the Beaulieu's servant, Martha Hyde, and she provided their alibi, saying that in those nights of the poisonings in November, the two men were at their Airy Street home with her, so it clearly couldn't have been them, according to Martha. When Mrs. Garber was called to testify, she actually claimed she couldn't get to the courthouse because the courtroom was on the second floor and she was dealing with joint pain as a result of the arsenic poisonings. In order to appease that, they actually brought the courtroom, or brought the jury down to the first floor, and she then came to be interviewed. She fully claims that this was not the first attempt that her brother and father tried to poison her and her family, and when they tried to give their reasoning, or when she tried to explain this earlier poisoning, she really didn't give any evidence. So the jury was skeptical as to whether or not her claims that her brother and father did this were actually valid. When District Attorney Irving P. Wanger went forward with the investigation, the jury ultimately did not find enough evidence to convict anyone. So to this day, the case has not been solved and nobody knows exactly who put the arsenic in the flour or why. But to make things even more interesting is here at Montgomery Cemetery, you have not only one of the murder victims, but you also have the three potential people who murdered them. So here you have one of the victims, Charles H. Garber, and his wife, Annie Garber. They're both buried here at Montgomery Cemetery. Charles was one of the ones who ended up dying from the poisoned pie. Annie died several years later. But at this same plot, if you look on the other side of the tombstone, it's a little bit dirty, but you can make out that John and Albinus are also buried here, and these are Annie's father and brother. As you may have noticed, when looking at the tombstone of the Garber family, the cross at the top is actually knocked over due to age, and there are many headstones in the cemetery that require restoration because the cemetery dates so far back. Being a nonprofit historical society, it does take a lot of fundraising to make sure that the cemetery is mowed and properly taken care of. Our hope is to continually raise funds to restore some of the tombstones, like the Garber family tombstone, to make sure that they are accurately preserved, you can read the names, and that if they have toppled over, they can be brought up again. So if you ever decide that you would like to donate either your time or some funds to help us maintain the cemetery, please do so either by going to our website at hsmcpa.org and going to the donate page, or feel free to reach out to us personally and ask how you can help out at contact@hsmcpa.org.